Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, I've retitled all my speeches, Lessons I've Learned from Invisible Fence. So let's get going. If you drive from Nashville to Louisville, straight shot up I-65, for years there was a billboard there was a mile marker there. It was 10 miles south of Louisville. Some of you will remember this billboard. They took it down about 3 or 4 years ago, and I hated it because I never ceased to get a kick out of this billboard. Here's what it said. Now, there were no pictures on it, no photographs, no drawings. It was all words, giant, real garish, day-glow letters. So I want you to picture this. Here's what it said. And again, some of you will remember this billboard. It said, Tattoo Charlie's. It's a tattoo place. And then right underneath it said, Done while you wait. And I remember the first time I saw it, I'm about a mile past it, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. Of course it's done while you wait. They all do it while you wait. Well, Tattoo Charlie was having fun, but there's an interesting lesson in that billboard, which is, well, all tattoo places pretty much do the same thing. There's really not much difference. So how do you differentiate in a marketplace that sees sameness? Whether they're looking at people that do what I do, whether they're looking at hotels, whether they're looking at where to locate a business, they see a lot of sameness. And the commissioner said something this morning that I wrote down word for word. I really like this, Commissioner. You said, our customers come into our store, which is the state of Tennessee, to see the products that we have on the shelves. So let's think about that. Let's take that idea and think about how in a market that sees sameness, any or all of us can differentiate. How does the city, how does the state, how does any entity create, gain, establish a competitive advantage? Now, as the commissioner said, I don't really do speeches, not in the traditional sense. I like conversations. So I am not going to do all the talking. This is going to be a little different. You all are going to jump in on this. For this to work, you got to be willing to talk to each other. You got to be willing to talk to me. So are you willing to play? Go ahead. There's 700 people in the room, 11 of you. All right, we're going to have to shift the mood. I want you to do something. I want you to do this really quick. When I say go, I want you to stand up. I want you to turn around and find somebody you have not spoken to yet. Here's what I want you to swap with each other. What do you love to do away from work? Everybody stand up, do it, quick. You got 1 minute. Okay, good. Now you can start to regroup. There we go. Now, see, doesn't it feel better? Hey, by the way, let me give credit to the guy that taught me to use that question, not just in this situation, but with anybody, a guy named Ryan Estes, a brilliant expert on marketing. But the fascinating thing about that question is, I wish you could have been up here and seen it from my perspective. Every single person in the room was smiling. If you ever want to shift a relationship beyond the, so nice to meet you, what do you do? And we talk about work, which is fine, that's good too. Ask them what they love to do away from work and feel the whole relationship shift. Boom, just like that. So just one that you could talk about. Okay, now that we've gotten everybody in a little more talkative state of mind, let's see what we can learn from the lessons of companies and organizations out there that have not only been able to create success, but sustain it. Because that's the tough part. Well, I don't know, let me ask you guys, which is tougher, becoming successful or staying successful? Yeah, sustaining it, that's the tough part. Well, what I've done for over 30 years is study not just companies, but nonprofits, universities, entities, organizations, and individuals that have been able to do that. And really, my whole job is to say, okay, what do they all have in common? What are they all doing that any of us could do, both as individuals and as our organizations? What are they doing that any of us could do if we just choose to do it? So let's talk about some of those. Let me give you a quote from Fortune magazine. A couple of years ago, Fortune did a cover story on the most successful companies in the world. Here was their conclusion. Listen to this. The key to performing like one of the world's most successful businesses is to do several easily identifiable things. Not that they are easy things to do, but they're for darn sure easily identifiable. In other words, there are no secrets of success. None. I've never run across a secret of success. It's out there right under our noses, right in front of all of us. And what I want to do is have a conversation with you right now, and let's start to look at that. The commissioner said this morning that you said you love case studies. I do too. I mean, that's a lot of my job is case studies, looking at what works. So let's look for some lessons, and here's the way we're going to do it. You've just been given an assignment. You are to pick any company or organization in the world, and you're going to go spend 1 month with them. And all of their doors, everything they do, how they do it, why they do it, it's all going to be wide open to you. So you're going to go study them for the purpose of coming back to your organization and using what you learned from them. So if you could pick any company in the world to study, just go ahead and be thinking about it. Who would you pick? You got 1 month to learn everything you possibly can about them. So is everybody coming up with somebody? Give me a head nod. All right. Let me let you guys go ahead and do yours. Turn to the person sitting next to you, the two of you or three of you, and very, very quickly just say, here's who I would go study and here's why. Just real quickly, just tell everybody who you'd study and why. Real quick, real quick. Okay. Is everybody swapped? Now listen, I do this little exercise with people all the time. And I keep a running tally of what the most popular choices are. I want to let you guess the top 3 choices that I've heard over the last few years. Who do you think is the number 1 company? Somebody shout it out. Apple, yeah. How many of you picked Apple? Raise your hands. All right, we're going to come back and see what lesson we could learn from Apple that has everything in the world to do with you in just a second. The number 2 company also starts with an A. Who? Amazon. The number 3 company starts with a G. Google. All right. Let me tell you what lesson we can all take away from just one thing that those 3 companies have in common. Let's start with Apple. How many of you use Apple products? You have me too. If you were to use a word or a phrase to describe Apple's products, somebody give me a phrase. What would it be? I've heard, intuitive, easy to use. Somebody said simple. Exactly. So easy to use. What about Amazon? How many of you are Amazon customers? How many of you are Amazon Prime customers? How easy does Amazon make it to do business and spend money with them? I mean, you're flipping through stuff and you're just going, that's cool, boom. We could use that, boom. I want that. You press one button and it's yours. All right, let's move on to Google. Google's whole reason for being, their whole premise, is to make the internet easy to use. And this morning, the commissioner talked about the ease of starting a business. Or actually, we were talking about how hard it is some places to start a business. What if you, when you think about you versus your competition, what if your potential customers said, well, you appear to be by far the easiest to do business with? Is that a real competitive advantage in what you do? Yeah, it is for any of us. In today's marketplace, listen, to the extent that any of us make it difficult to do business, you got a problem. Or you've got a serious competitive problem. And so you look at Apple, you look at Amazon, you look at Google, all three of them. No, we're very easy to do business with. I'm curious, let me hear, just for fun, a couple of the companies that you picked. Somebody raise their hand. What company would you go study? Way back in the back, yes, sir. Jack Daniels. Easy to get to, accessible, good product. What would you want to learn from Jack Daniels? Yeah, just the marketing and the branding. How do you become an icon? Somebody else. Yes, ma'am, right there. Golly. Well, that goes without saying. Let me hear one more. Somebody right in here. Who'd you pick? Yes, sir. Tesla. Yeah, more and more people are saying Tesla. I spoke to a bank group in Lansing, Michigan yesterday, and the first one that came up, somebody said Disney. And I said, did any of you pick Disney, by the way? Anybody? Oh, okay. 2, 3, 4. Oh, gosh. A dozen of you did. Here's the thing about Disney. We could go the rest of the day and talk about what we could learn from Disney. For my money, Disney is the single most effective money extraction machine on planet Earth. Holy moly. Yeah, Disney knows what they're doing. Well, let me give you some, besides ease of doing business, let me give you some of the things that I have learned from studying really successful organizations. And let's start with this. They make it simple. You hear speakers say all the time, if you could take one idea from what I'm telling you, okay? If you could take one idea from what I'm telling you that I've learned, go back and simplify. Simplify every single thing you can conceivably simplify. How many of you have had this thought in the last month? You may have even had it today. You may have already had it more than once today. How many of you have had this thought though? I think we're making this thing way more complicated than it needs to be. Anybody? Yeah. One of my clients is a company called New Farm. It's an agricultural products company out of Australia. The CEO is an Australian named Doug Rathbone. He said this at their leadership conference. I worked with him a little over a year ago. I love this. I wrote it down word for word. Tell me if you agree with this. The price we pay for making things too complicated is immeasurable. It slows us down. It makes for bad decisions. It scatters our efforts. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. I love this, Commissioner. How many keys does Pal have? One key. Now, I look at that as a metaphor, a potential metaphor for all kinds of things. But honestly, you want to improve your competitive position, you want to improve your effectiveness, your efficiency, everything. Go back and simplify. The late Steve Jobs of Apple said this. He said, simplicity and focus have become my mantra. Listen to the way he said this. He said, it takes a lot of really hard work to get your thinking clean enough to make things simple. But it's worth all that hard work. Because if you can make things simple, you can move mountains. Think there's any truth in that? You tell me your experience, which is generally the best answer, the best solution, the best idea, the simple one or the complicated one? It is so easy to make things complicated. It's tough to make things simple. But if we're interested in becoming more competitive, then that's one of the things that we have to do. See, when you make things simple, you get clarity. When you get clarity, you know what to focus on. I love this definition or description of strategy. The ultimate purpose of strategy is to create an intense focus on the things that matter most. Let me give you a way to, this is an absolute take-home, a way to think about your priorities and establish your priorities so that you know you're working on the most important thing. Here's what I want you to do when you go back. Answer this. What are the 3 things that we have to get right every time? I'm dead serious. That is my take-home assignment for you, to answer this question. What are the 3 things that if we get them right every single time, we're in good shape? Let me give you a couple of examples of the way that works. This morning the commissioner was talking about in East Tennessee, you want a great hamburger, you go to Pal's. In the western United States, and if I were doing this, if we were in Phoenix or Nevada or California right now, I could say this. I'm fishing for the name of a company. Some of you will know what I'm fishing for, even though they don't do business in this part of the country. But in the western United States, I would say to an audience, I'm going to say 2 words. You tell me who I'm talking about. And they all say the same thing. The 2 words are great hamburger. Who am I talking about? In-N-Out Burger. A bunch of you got it. How many of you have ever been to In-N-Out Burger? Yeah, you're getting teary-eyed just remembering it, aren't you? I get it. That is one great hamburger. At In-N-Out Burger, they have figured out that if they get 3 things right, they are solid gold. And by the way, they are solid gold. That's an extraordinarily successful company. But let's look at it this way. If you were the CEO of a hamburger restaurant or a hamburger restaurant chain, what 3 things would you say? Okay, everybody, let's get these 3 things right. Because if we get these 3 things right, we'll be fine. We'll be successful. Turn to the person next to you and tell them at least one of the 3 things you would pick. Go, just real quick. All right, everybody got one? Now, I'm not asking you to guess theirs. Your 3 might be totally different than In-N-Out Burger's 3. You might have a different business model. You might have a different target market. But what would be one of yours? Yeah, please. Okay, cost and quality, that's 2, and I like both of them. You would want to hold costs down and quality. How many of you said quality? Yeah, and quick. Now that's interesting. Pal's is quick. I mean, that's one of their 3 for sure, is quick. That's not one of In-N-Out Burger's 3. But their customers totally know that and get it. At In-N-Out Burger, it's if you want one of these hamburgers, you're going to have to wait a while. And their customers are fine with that. Just as legitimate to go the other way and say, no, what we're going to do is we're going to be quick. What would be another one? Somebody, anybody else? Consistency. Absolutely. Any more guesses? Or not guesses, but what would one of yours be? Service, yeah. Let me tell you what In-N-Out Burger's 3 are. These are their words. We will serve only the freshest, highest quality foods. Now look at what that does to decision making. I'm the head of purchasing. You're the CEO. I come to you and say, I have found us a deal on lettuce. If we go to a new supplier, we can save 10 cents every, whatever would make sense, 100 pounds on lettuce. What's his first question going to be to me? Is it the freshest, highest quality lettuce? And if I say, oh, no, probably not the absolute freshest, what's his answer going to be? Then we're not going to do it. That is not one of our 3 things that will get us where we need to be. See, if you get clarity on what matters most, it makes everything so much easier, so much more effective. Let me give you their second one. So starting off with, we will serve only the freshest, highest quality foods, served with, and a couple of you said it, the highest quality service. Now, if you leave it at that, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, everybody, let's go out and give good service. You've got to specify exactly what that means. Exactly, specifically what that means. And then number 3, and this one is actually my favorite. Let's review. We will serve only the freshest, highest quality foods, served with the highest quality service, and served in a spotless, sparkling, clean environment. Was that one that you said? Yeah. Spotless, sparkling, clean environment. They didn't say clean. They didn't leave it at spotless. They threw in sparkling. They're not kidding around. But think about it. Here's the thing. People that are struggling have 1,000 things to do. People in organizations that are really successful probably got 3 things to do. It's a huge, huge marked difference in success and struggle. Joe, I got 1,000 things to do every day. Then you're doing it wrong. You've probably only got about 3 things to do. Now, under those 3 things, of course, there's lots of tasks and duties and tactical things. But if you can do you see the power of having everybody in the organization understanding these are our 3 things? Let me give you another one, a client of mine that's very successful. You're familiar with him. You've seen their trucks on the road, or they're advertising Old Dominion Freight Line. I love their 3, and I love the language they use. There's not one speck of corporate speak in this. They say it. It's so funny. Every now and then I'll have people say, well, we know what we want to do. We're just trying to say it in a way that sounds right. Just say what you want to do. If it works, that's what sounds right. Here's Old Dominions. Now think about it. They're a freight company. I mean, come on, that's a logistics jigsaw puzzle with 1,000,000 different parts to it. They boiled it down to 3 things. Number 1, pick it up when you said you would. Number 2, deliver it when you said you would. Number 3, deliver it intact and all there. Think about it. All of the trillion things that all those employees do every day fit under those 3 things. And what that does is it keeps everybody, and they talk about those 3 things all the time, it keeps everybody focused on, remember the most important stuff. Because how many of you agree with me? Sometimes we get so busy, just busy doing stuff that we can forget the point. Anybody? Can I get a witness besides me? Yeah. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was going to Ocean City, Maryland to do a program for a division of AT&T. And to get from Washington, D.C., where my flight landed, I rented a car. I drove through a little town called Cambridge, Maryland. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I hadn't had anything to eat, and I'm pretty hungry, so I spotted a McDonald's and I pulled in. Now, I walked in and the place was empty. There were employees there, but there were no customers. It was just downtime. But coincidentally, as soon as I got in, 6 or 7 people lined up behind me, and we're all standing there, waiting for the immediate service that you generally get at McDonald's. And as we stand there, let me just act it out. We're standing at the counter. Here's the cash register. Here's the counter. Can you picture that? Here's what happens. Yo. I don't know. And switch places. It's not that no employees were there. It's not that nobody was there. As I recall, there were plenty of people in the McKitchen that day. There were 6 or 7 of them swarming around back there. Now, trade places. You are now the customers, and you're all standing at the counter, okay? And here's what we saw. 6 or 7 McDonald's employees doing various versions of this. Remember, you are the customers standing in line at the counter. Here's what we saw. Jimmy, yeah, we're going to need some more cups. Get some more cups out front when you get a chance. They're looking at us. And everybody in this room has experienced that somewhere, right? It's almost surreal feeling. They're making direct eye contact with us. And this is why I love true stories. You can't make up something this good. The guy standing behind me, and I'm a pretty big guy, but this was a guy, he was actually a truck driver. He was driving a semi when he pulled in. The truck driver standing behind me, he was about 6'6", 250, 260. He taps me on the shoulder. I turn around, he goes, "Hey, buddy, can you see me?" Because, I can see you. Why can't they see us? I said, I don't know. Now, about that time, the woman in the drive-in window, who I'm assuming was the shift manager, She says, somebody get the counter. Michelle, get the counter. So Michelle, 19, 20 years old, comes up to the counter, big smile on her face. She comes up to the counter and says, hi, welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order? I said, Michelle, before I give you my order, on behalf of the folks here, we're curious about something. We've all been standing here in line for what seems to us like a long time. And every one of you saw us standing here. And don't get me wrong, nobody's goofing off. You're all busy. We see that. And look, maybe you're busy doing something you have to do back there to take care of us up here. But we didn't get that information. I mean, we're getting no information. We're getting no Happy Meals. We're getting nothing, Michelle. And I guess our question is, how can that happen? And Michelle, with the straightest face God ever put on a human being, and is obviously a little disgusted with me, my lack of knowledge of the restaurant industry, she looks at me and she goes, okay, sir, okay. All right, let me explain something to you. You see, we really do have a lot of things to do here besides just wait on customers. As my buddy Dale Irvin would say, I looked at her like a dog looks at a ceiling fan. I couldn't even process it, much less respond to it. But here's the kicker. If you had asked any one of those employees, if you had said, hey, are you doing a good job? What would every single one of them have said? Yes. Here's the problem. There was no clarity on what mattered most. And I see that in so many organizations that if I were to walk in and pick somebody at random and say, what are the 2 or 3 most important things here? They'd go, what do you mean? Explain the question. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you go to a truly successful, effective organization and ask anybody what's important here, they will say, I will tell you exactly what is important here, regardless of their job description. They all know. They all get it. Make it simple. Stay focused. I met a man about 18 years ago who has to be, of everybody I've ever met, the master of simplicity and focus. I was doing work with a company in Kansas City. We were in a hotel, it was just like this, and I was with them for the whole day. During a break, near lunchtime, I went out in the hallway. Kansas City Chamber of Commerce was having their monthly membership meeting. Their speaker was Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines, the co-founder and longtime CEO. I looked down the hall, I spotted him. He was standing under a no smoking sign, smoking a cigarette. I thought, are you kidding me? And he was standing there by himself. There was not a soul standing around him. I thought, that's Herb Kelleher. Couldn't pass it up. I went down, I introduced myself, said, Mr. Kelleher, I'm a big fan of Southwest. I'm a fan of yours. I've written about Southwest in a couple of my books. I said, I think I know the answer to this, but I'd just love to hear you say it. Can I ask you a question? He says, what do you want to know, son? I said, what makes Southwest better than the other airlines? And he said, well, I love the first part of his answer. He says, first thing is we're real good at running an airline. He says, main thing is there's these core things. We never take our eye off those. Things like getting there on time, getting your baggage the same place you're going, being a value carrier. He said, we're not always the lowest price, but we work real hard at delivering value. He said, that's the main thing. We never forget that. He said, there are a couple of other things. Love and fun. He says, we love everybody. We love customers. You watch our people work with each other. They couldn't work together that way if they didn't love each other. They all love me. You ask them, they'll tell you they love me. You know why? Because I love them. I tell them all the time I love them. Why in the world wouldn't I? He said, the other thing is fun. Son, we have more fun running an airline than the law ought to allow. Let me tell you something. You get those main things right, you pay attention to them every single day, you love everybody and you have fun, hell, you make so much money you can't count it all. Are there any questions? It's Business 101. What else do we need to know? Let me wrap it up. I want to keep you on time. I'll leave you with two final thoughts. One is my favorite quote. I think it's a beautiful quote that you can apply to business, regardless of what business you're in. Michelangelo, the great painter, sculptor, writer, Renaissance genius. Michelangelo once said, the great danger for most of us is not that we will aim too high and miss it. The great danger for most of us is that we will aim too low and hit it. And I loved what you were saying this morning, Commissioner, about that space between probable and impossible. Danger is if you aim too low and hit it. That's your problem. No, aim a little too high every time. But here's my favorite. I heard this story. It's an old story, but I heard it from a guy named Sir Ken Robinson, who's actually an expert on innovation and education. I love this. Here's the attitude I hope we all go back with. Little girl in kindergarten drawing a picture, just laser beam focused on it, not looking up for anything, to the point that the teacher notices and thinks, what in the world is she drawing over there? She's so intense about it. So the teacher goes over to her and says, hey, what are you drawing over here? And the little girl looks up for a second and says, I'm drawing a picture of God. And the teacher kind of laughed and said, but honey, nobody knows what God looks like. Little girl says, they will in a couple of minutes. So go home with that attitude. Good luck to all of you. Thank you so much for having me. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.